Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Purple Breakdown, a podcast covering the Baltimore Ravens. I am your host, Alex, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode. I hope everyone is having a great weekend. Well, not week, and we are closing in on the weekend. It's almost Thursday, one day away from Friday. But I'm back here to talk about the Baltimore Ravens and the news going on with there. And as before, there's a little coaching update. Jesse Mentor and DaCosta have been pretty busy hiring more people and getting their staff together, and especially Mentor staff together. There's been a few new additions over the past days. First off is Miles Taylor from the Los Angeles Rams. He is being hired as a defensive back coach. Eddie Faulkner is getting hired from the Steelers. He was the running back coach for the Steelers. He had experiencing help to develop Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren. We saw the years that they've had in the past, and well, honestly, how explosive some of them can be, both with receiving and rushing, especially Kenneth Gainwell there with over 400 yards receiving. And the Ravens have Justice Hill for that, but always can have more help there. And also Joe Lombardi has been hired as a senior offensive assistant, and everyone knows Joe Lombardi is a former offensive coordinator for both the Broncos and Saints under Sean Payton. He was the Broncos offensive coordinator for 3 years before being let go this past season after their failure in the playoffs, which honestly, was their performance. They're not that good, but when you don't have Bo Nix and your starting quarterback, how much blame of that is going to be thrown at Joe Lombardi? But their loss, the Ravens gain, and honestly, looking at these hires, I really like it. I know Mike Mickens was already hired for the defense and in helping with the secondary, but it doesn't help getting more depth there. I still think Mike Mickens would be the more primary coach back there to help. The Eddie Faulkner and Joe Lombardi hires, I really do actually love a lot, because when you look at it, Declan Doyle just being hired as the offensive coordinator for the Ravens is big news. It's really big news. But he hasn't had play calling experience yet. Now, that's not to say that he hasn't been a big, massive help, especially within the Bears offense. He was a massive help there. He was apparently responsible for halftime adjustments going into the second half. He always helped with game planning and breakdown and just being film breakdown and just being under Ben Johnson and having been under Sean Payton too. He's seen what great play callers look like and how to develop great offenses. And I think he'll do really well and amazing, especially with him being a play caller. But he's young. He's as old as Lamar, and he needs level heads around him to help give good advice. And that's where I think Eddie Faulkner, even though he is going to be the running back coach and Derrick Henry's already in that room, still will help give experience to the running backs. But he was also the interim offensive coordinator for the Steelers in the past, so he has experience being an offensive coordinator, and he can help give advice to Declan Doyle there. And Joe Lombardi and his experiences being an offensive play caller will also help settle in and just help advise and coach Declan Doyle in the right way and help make sure he's making the right calls. And so it's not so much that there's not a distrust of Declan Doyle. I think it's a great hire. It's an A-plus hire, and that he's going to do amazing. But it's the same as just having Jesse Mentor come in as head coach and being a younger head coach, first time as a head coach. You're just bringing in cool, level heads, experienced coaches that can come in and support them and make them the best that they possibly can be. And that's why I like this so much. Now, speaking of Declan Doyle, I think the offense there is going to look well. It's going to be better than it was in the past if they can add a few weapons and stay consistent. And when I say add a few weapons, we all know that first comes down to re-signing key players that are going on free agency and also opening up enough cap space to make those rehires, which comes into getting a new contract with Lamar Jackson, an extension going out, which could save a lot of money there. I mean, 20, 30 million if you can really work it out well. Restructuring other contracts, which bare minimum you do not want to restructure Lamar's contract. That is the last case scenario, because that will lead to problems down the road, even worse. But restructuring like Matabike's contract or Mark Andrews' contract, letting certain players walk or get cut like Marlon Humphrey, that'll open up the cap space and allow you. But Declan Doyle's offense, I think it's going to look really balanced. We all saw how the Bears performed in the second halves this past year. I mean, they came out and dominated in multiple second halves. So if it's true that he was the one that was responsible for second half adjustments, then oh boy, does that look amazing for the Ravens, especially with running offenses. I think it's going to be a balanced offense. I don't say 50-50 down the middle, but it could be like a 45-55, 40-60 split in there. And that's really good because that works to the Ravens' strengths with having Derrick Henry in the backfield and Lamar Jackson, because you're going to run the ball with the two of them in the backfield. That's just not out of the question. I mean, you have the two of them, they are going to run. But opening up those passing, the pass down the field, and I think this is where you look back to the Ravens 2 years ago and what they were able to do with the combo of the run punch, and then that opened up everything downfield that allowed for crazy passes. And Lamar's half MVP season, because I still think he should have won that year, there was just voter fatigue, so half an MVP, I guess you could call it. But it may look more like that, where it's this 45-55 split, and that run is unlocking, and that's what Declan Doyle, I think he'll run heavy tight end, fits out there at times, and it's going to be a good offense. Now, just because I'm saying 45-55 split, heavy tight ends, doesn't mean that they'll do, 4 or 5 wideouts there at times. There's always going to be times where that's going to happen, and Lamar is going to fit into that. But I think one of the other things that Declan Doyle needs to focus on this offense is making sure that Lamar doesn't have to play hero ball, or neither does Derrick Henry. And I say that because in the past we've seen Lamar play hero ball, and it's amazing fun to watch. But it leads to injuries, and if Lamar gets injured, we see how seasons go. I mean, Tyler Huntley coming in at quarterback was a lot better than what Cooper Rush was, and everyone was touting how good Cooper Rush would be for the Ravens, and that didn't turn out well. But you don't want Lamar getting hurt and injured again and playing at not peak performance. Because when he's playing at peak performance, is completely healthy, he's amazing. So I'm looking for Declan Doyle to make the offense settle into a point where you don't have to make Lamar play hero ball and try and make crazy plays that can put him in precarious situations and get him hurt. And that also just goes to Lamar at times also needs to not play hero ball himself, where he needs to recognize if there's just something that's open quick, just hit that, even if it's not going to be a first down. If it's 2nd and 7 and what's downfield isn't open, but there's just something off to the left that you can hit and it gets you 4 yards out of it, that makes you a better third down. And there's times where he tries to extend the play a little too long and just puts the Ravens in bad situations. And I'm not saying that's every time, because the reverse effect happens too, where it's just like, oh my gosh, he makes a crazy play. But I want to see less hero ball and more consistent on the offense. And I'm hoping that's what Declan Doyle and the older heads that will be coming in around him can coach into the offense. We are going to settle in. We're going to play smart. We're going to play consistent. And we're going to make it so we don't have to play hero ball on the offense. We don't need to rely on Derrick Henry having a 180-yard rushing game and 2-3 touchdowns. We don't need to rely on Lamar Jackson having 50 yards of rushing and 280 yards of passing and 3 passing touchdowns. We don't need that. We will get there just by consistent. We don't need to get there on big plays every single time. We will get there with consistency, with drive, with determination, and making smart decisions. And that's what I'd like to see. And all this is going to boil down to not only the coaching staff instilling, and I think the defense can be said that they have to put in, and the coaching staff has to hold the players accountable and make sure that they are not only being held accountable, but being coached up to the point where they can make those decisions. And if they aren't making those decisions, then something needs to be done. And when they can do that, they need to assess the team and look at where the needs are. And again, re-signing key players, building through the draft and the free agency. Now, I know that's what everyone does, but you need to make smart choices in the free agency and then use the draft to bring in young, explosive talent that will be there for 4 or 5 years on lower contracts that allow you to have consistent good teams. And I still think this is when you're looking at the draft. I will do the draft board later this week. Friday night, we'll be doing another mock draft. But I still look at the draft board. I think defense needs to be the focus in the first round and possibly even the second round, depending on who's there. But first round, if Peter Woods is on the board there, that needs to be the pick. I'm not saying don't add offensive weapons. I think you can very well argue offensive weapons. Mekhi Lemons, I know Carnell Tate has been projected to the Ravens too, and getting offensive weapons like that for Lamar would be amazing, and it would add more depth, especially since I don't think the Ravens should consistently try and rely on bringing in older receivers. And I said this in the past, older receivers to be big X-factor receivers, and I know some people would argue that DeAndre Hopkins may have been utilized wrong and may still have more in the tank to give, and I know he said he has one more year, but the same argument was giving for OBJ, and the Ravens moved on from him, and I think the right choice is to arguably move on from DeAndre Hopkins. I know he can make contested catches down there, and it looks crazy, but you need somebody young, because if he stays 1 year, and say you make the playoffs but you don't make the Super Bowl, he's gone the next year and you're back to the square one where now Zay is also may or may not have an extended contract, and you're back to square one of, well, we don't have a receiver there anymore besides Rashad Bateman. And so I can see the arguments for getting a first-round wide receiver in Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemons, and honestly, I actually like Mekhi Lemons a little more than I do Carnell Tate. But the trenches, I think, are a higher priority focus, and especially since the Ravens have proven that you can win Super Bowls with lesser offenses, but immaculate defenses. And it's not been the only time that a team in NFL Super Bowl history has done that. And so I think the offense has the capability to be explosive and be a top offense, but you're going to win a Super Bowl by having the best defense out there. And that first needs to focus on adding depth to the trenches, either on edge and defensive interior, the D-line. And I think bringing a free agency in for those interior defenders, it's a stopgap measure for a year, just sort of like DeAndre Hopkins. So you need somebody in the draft that is going to have immediate impact. And when looking at it, I would rather have a massive high ceiling with possibly a little bit of a lower floor, because you want those traits that make a great defensive tackle. I think that comes down to Peter Woods. I think Peter Woods is that choice, and I'm going to keep preaching that the Ravens should, if he is there, should take him. And arguably in the second round is where the options open up more. I've seen in multiple mock drafts I've done that Zion Young has been available in the second round, and if he is there, I would love to see him taken too. And now you have Peter Woods and Zion Young, and that stacks up, and especially two younger edge defenders that builds the defensive line. And if Madubuike can come back healthy, you've now got a great core. And if you re-sign Jermonte Jones, and now you're not looking just towards how do we win a Super Bowl next year, you're looking how do we win Super Bowls in 5 years down the line. Because that's where the Ravens need to be looking at these picks that they make, is not how we win now, which, yes, how we win now, but not only how we win now, but so we can win again and again and again. Which I think comes with defense first. And honestly, there's wide receiver talent there that could come in the third round. I think the other pick that you could do in the second round, if he is there, is Prenon from Oregon, the guard. I think he'd be a great pick there too. Between Zion or him, it's the two of them. And honestly, guard would also be a good pick there, focusing on trench on the other side. And then there's wide receivers in the third round, if Zachariah Branch or Skylar Bell is there. Those would be 2 great picks in the 3rd round to add further wide receiver depth. And then you can look at who else is available in free agency too. Coming up here in March when free agency opens. I believe it opens on March 11th. Which just makes extending Lamar's contract and restructuring and prepping so much more important right now to get done. Cutting Marlon Humphrey, that you know how much money you have going into free agency when it comes up here in March. And because I know the recent extensions show that the Ravens could be getting $22 to $25 million more and now cap space. And that's great, but first and foremost, that money that's going to go is, I mean, they really only have about $10 million in cap space right now to work with outside of what they have to save for their picks. So if you get that, sure, you have $32, $35 million to work with in free agency, but with Tyler Linderbaum going on free agency and you really want to re-sign him, you're just sucking up a 17, 20 million right there. And now you're back to square one of we don't have much for cap space. So you need these contracts to get going now so that when free agency hits, you're more looking at going, oh, well, maybe we have 40, 50, 60 million dollars to work with now. And that's a much better figure. Well, I know I've rambled on there for a while. And I would like to thank everyone for joining in. I know it's an abrupt end, but that's about all I had for today and the news that has been circulating. Wanted to get out there and just make another episode. Next week, this coming Friday, I will be doing another mock draft, and we'll do a full mock draft this time. I have about everything ready. There's some interesting later round picks that I think would do very well for the Ravens, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and possibly adding more depth at tight end if the Ravens are not able to keep Isaiah Likely or Charlie Kolar. And so I'm really excited to do that. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming in and joining and watching and listening. If you're on Spotify, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a comment, like, share the video. It's how the podcast grows and the community grows around it. We're at 27 subscribers already, and I'm absolutely loving it. I would love by next week to be up to 30 subscribers, so just 3 more. It makes my day seeing you guys post comments too, and I love responding to them. I'll respond to them as much and quick as I can. I love to interact and keep talking with everyone. I'm thinking about starting up a Discord here not too long. I'd love to hear thoughts on whether or not I should start up a Discord. If you are on Spotify, please follow, leave a review, give it stars. It helps just grow it on Spotify too. I'd like to thank everyone for joining in and watching, and I can't wait to talk with everyone next time. Have a great day.